Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to our second session by the Skip Alliance on using the Thriving Lives Toolkit to help service children thrive. My name is Charlotte and I work for Study Hire, which is a Uni Connect programme, and this is part of an ongoing Teacher CPD webinar series which is hosted in collaboration with Aspire Hire. And today we are really lucky to be joined by the Skip Alliance, who are going to deliver the second session of a two-part training conference on using their Thriving Lives Toolkit. Really looking forward to this session. If you were lucky enough to come to the last session on the 8th, then you'll know how into how much detail the Skip Alliance goes and the great work that they do, really. So really looking forward to hearing some more insight from them today. So before I introduce our speakers, I just wanted to make you aware that the session is being recorded so that you can watch back or send the link on to any of your colleagues who may have missed out today. I'll send that in a follow-up email after the session, and it will also be available on the Study Hire website, the Aspire Hire website and the Skip Alliance website as well. So please do feel free to forward this on. The recording from the last session should have also been sent to you, but likewise it will be available on all of our websites. I'd also like to point out that you should have been sent a delegate booklet. So this is an editable PDF, so that should have been sent to you via email. And please do keep this handy today, as we will be referring to it throughout the session. I'm going to post a link also to the PDF just in case you can't find it into your emails. Let a few more people in. Okay, and also please may I ask that you do keep your mics off throughout the session just to avoid any background noise. And yeah, so while we listen to our panelists, then please do keep your mics off, but please do unmute yourself at the end during our Q&A to ask any questions that you may wish to verbally. Alternatively, if you have any questions that come up throughout the session, then please do type them into the chat box, which hopefully you found already, but I will just say a quick hello in that afterwards, and then you'll know where to post your questions. Okay. And finally, we will be posting a link to an evaluation form at the end of the session. We ask that you please do fill this in. We would really appreciate it if you could just take a moment to fill out the evaluation form so that we can gather your opinions on how the session went and learn about what we can do better. And I will now introduce our speakers. I'm going to hand over to Andy, who is kind enough to be emceeing the session today, who's going to introduce all of our speakers. So welcome, Andy, and thanks very much.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andy Hayes. I'm a school improvement officer with Oxfordshire County Council, having previously worked in school improvement with Hampshire for about 12 years. And I've been directly and actively involved in championing the needs of service pupils for about 6 or 7 years now. So a warm welcome to you all to this second session of the training being run by the Skip Alliance Oxfordshire and Central England Hub, just one little cog in the network of hubs that the Skip Alliance now has in place. And whilst primarily tonight's session is aimed at supporting you in utilising the 7 principles of effective support as detailed in the Thriving Lives Toolkit, we've also got 1 or 2 other little treats for you this evening in terms of considering the needs of the service pupils that you will be actively supporting. So a warm welcome to you all. I'm very aware from the delegate list that we've got head teachers, family support workers, teachers, lead practitioners and teaching assistants, school-based colleagues, so warm welcome to you. We've got colleagues from local authorities joining us this evening, and we've got colleagues from the further education and higher education sectors. So to one and all of you from far-flung places, many thanks for giving up your time this evening. I'm sure you're all very busy. It is a very busy time of year, and I think our prime aim this evening is to make sure that you take something away, that we make the session worthwhile for you, that we add to your thinking, and that you leave having had your thinking added to in some way. So you'll see from page 6 of the delegate booklet, which Charlotte has already referred to, that we've got, as well as some further input from Kath Lawrence from the Skip Alliance around the toolkit and opportunities for you to discuss the use of that toolkit. We've also, after a break, going to be hearing from an ex-service child herself, Jodie, who is a graduate ambassador at Oxford Brookes University. So hello, Jodie.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I look forward to talking to you later and answering any questions you guys might have.
Brilliant. And we've then also got delighted that we've been joined this evening by Steph Fordry, who's the head teacher at RAF Benson Primary School and also chair of the SCIS National Executive Advisory Committee. So warm welcome to you too, Steph.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm also here with my pastoral support officer, Bev Kellett, as well. So we look forward to sharing a little snippet of the things that we do in our school to support service children.
Great. And to talk to us about supporting service children, specifically with special educational needs and disabilities, we've been joined by Ed Harris, the Senior Education Officer at the MOD. So good evening to you too, Ed. Are you there? We'll assume you are, but maybe you're mute. Okay, and I didn't introduce Kath, who is with us as well. So Kath from the Skip Alliance, nice to see you again this evening, Kath.
Thanks, Andy. Good afternoon, everyone.
Great. So a packed session. There will be opportunities for you to discuss, but please feel free to use the chat module on the Zoom here to ask any questions. There'll be a session at the end at 5:25 for about 15 or 20 minutes when all the speakers this evening are going to be answering questions that you might be posing. So you can do that in a number of ways. You can either post the question onto the chat, you can hold on to it and ask it directly to one of the presenters at the end of the session. Either way will work. If I could just ask you, please, to ask questions that are of a general nature, for example, in relation to meeting the needs of service pupils, you know, with a particular aspect of their lives in mind, trying to avoid very specific questions about individual children or their families. We'd want it to benefit, the questions to benefit all delegates who are with us this evening. Thank you for that. Okay, if we just pop onto the next slide, please, Charlotte. And you'll see from this map here that if you were to go to the Skip Alliance website, Kath will correct me if I make any mistakes here, but there is an online targeting tool there where you can identify local authorities or regions to establish the numbers of schools with service children and or the numbers of service children themselves. So if you take this central England geographical area, the Skip Alliance hubs do not have any geographical boundaries, they all merge into one, but this central England area is made up of a number of local authorities, and Oxfordshire and Northamptonshire are the two local authorities with the highest numbers of service children. As you can see there, Oxfordshire a little over 3,000 service children in 200 schools, making up about 56% of all the schools in the county. Northamptonshire, 550 service children, spread across about 51% of the schools. And across the region as a whole, 42% of schools have at least one service child. And we know from the numbers involved that the vast majority of those schools are going to be schools with a very tiny number of service children, therefore a small amount of money to spend in meeting their personal and pastoral needs, but just as important that they are doing that. So gives you a flavour of the kind of area that we're covering. Thank you, Charlotte. Okay, so just reflecting on the first session on the 8th of June. It was only an hour session. It was not as long as the session this evening. And just reflecting on that myself, thinking in particular of Phil Dent's input around the theory of change. And I've been working with the Skip Alliance now for about 6 years, since 2015. Whilst I think it would be fair, I hope, Kath, to say that initially the agenda was about the lack of movement of service children from secondary school into further and higher education, and trying to find out why that was, and perhaps trying to champion through the wider participation agenda the movement of more service children into higher education. I think the work of the Skip Alliance has become much more than that now, and I think what the Skip Alliance has very successfully done, it's identified a need to ensure that that service children's lives are understood, that their needs are understood, and that appropriate support can be provided to help ensure that they're not disadvantaged in any way. And in leading that understanding, the Skip Alliance has created accurate and easily accessible research, practice, and policy to support schools and other organisations who are supporting service children. So they've led proactive. They're a national leader in making sure that what is needed to meet those needs are understood. And we know that service children are not a homogenous group. They have many characteristics that equip them well to deal with adversity and change. But their needs do need to be understood by those working closest to them, so that appropriate provision can be made, bespoke and personalised support. In terms of the need, Phil also talked to us about the 4 Ds, and I was going to quiz you to see if you could remember what they are. But we know that service children come from a very broad and diverse range of backgrounds. Their circumstances are not unique, but equally they're dissimilar to many others as well. So the discontinuity that can come from their lives, whether it's mobility in particular, and the impact of that mobility through their learning, their progress over time, the relationships they form and have to disform and then reform once they move, and the opportunities that come their way are all part of that. We need to be able to understand what that diversity and discontinuity looks like, so that we can provide those opportunities for developing them in terms of their adaptability, their resilience, their independence, and also their maturity. And we need to make sure they're not disadvantaged in any way. So that bespoke support, that personalised support, is crucial in my experience for service children. We need to understand them well, we need to understand their background, the challenges they face, and we need to provide that support in times of need. We also know from another piece of work by the Skip Alliance, in terms of listening to the voices of service children, that we need to be deliberate, we need to be open, we need to be child-centred, and we need to be willing to change in terms of what they have to offer in terms of the story they can tell about their lives. I think it's important, and these words that follow mine, I think when we're listening to any children, but we're talking about service children in particular here, we need to have a blank piece of paper when we're listening to them. We need to make sure that when we listen to their views, that we are genuine and authentic, and that we inquire appreciatively through active listening to really get inside their heads, see their life through their eyes, understand the challenges they face through their eyes, and in order to be able to respond and adapt and make a difference to the provision we make. So that genuine and appreciative inquiry, that active listening, I think is crucial for any children. But particularly here, because we're talking about service children. The Thrive, and in her session this evening, and very shortly, Kath is going to tell us a little bit more about what the Toolkit helps, seeking to maximise the support they provide for service children. For those of you that were at that last session on the 8th of June, we did set some homework. We did ask you to read the 7 principles of effective support, and for at least one of those principles, check out this on the website, and hopefully come armed to the session today, ready to discuss and understanding of how the Toolkit might support you in your own circumstances. And hopefully you've had a chance to check out some of the case studies on the effective use of the Service Pupil Premium that can also be found on the website. So that was the homework last time, and that brings to a kind of conclusion my reflections on that last session. Any questions, obviously, please pose them in the chat. Charlotte, I don't know whether anything's come up that you want to pick up on now. Have I been breaking up on people?
Yeah, so there's not been any questions yet, Andy. So I think we're all right at the moment, but I think it's sort of a little bit. Yeah, we can hear you okay at the moment, but
okay, that's fine. Well, I've finished my input for the time being, so with great pleasure, I'll hand straight over to Kath from the Skip Alliance to tell us a little bit more about the Toolkit. I think you're going to start with a reflection as well from last time, Kath.
Thanks very much, Andy. And we are very, very grateful that you've joined us from your hotel room, which may be why the connection's not perfect, but thank you very much. We're very honoured that you've broken your holiday. Hopefully my connection's all right. Let me know in the chat if it isn't, but also can you put your thoughts in the chat from what you found out in between, or just your thoughts from last week, last time, those of you that were here. We've also got a little Menti slide. I hope it's going to work, that it will update on here, but if you go to menti.com on your phone or on another browser window and put in that number 27539130, and hopefully we'll be able to see what you've put in there. So if you can have a go, it should update, but it doesn't always seem to work. We'll have a look, see what happens. I don't think it has, so I'm just going to go onto the website. If you can put any thoughts into that on menti.com. Give me a quick moment to share that instead. Oh, there we go. Hopefully,
yeah, great.
Can you now see that?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Fantastic. Child-led, wonderful, support, informative comes out most, child voice. Whoever put surprising, can you pop in the chat what was surprising? That would be interesting to know. Fantastic, thought-provoking. Very good to hear that it was interesting. Put in the chat for me if you can, if you had thoughts on what messages that you took about support for service children, what you found surprising, what you found interesting, what you found informative. I will try and reshare the main slides. Okay, can somebody tell me whether I'm sharing that again, right?
Yeah, that's fine, Kath.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, I'm just going to recap a little bit because I know everyone here, not everybody here was there last time. Just going to run through the 7 principles, but then look in a little bit more detail. Oh, thank you. There's stuff coming in on the chat. Fantastic. Each child is unique. I'm just going to run through a different principle from the one that we looked at last time as well. So this is page 10 in the booklet. It's page 5 of the toolkit itself. So if you've, I think Charlotte put a link in the chat to the booklet earlier. As you'll remember, we developed this framework from a research report. We commissioned some research into the needs, the context, ideas from young people themselves about support and about what they needed. And we developed this into this self-evaluation tool. So the toolkit uses that research's 7 principles that came out with their accompanying vision statements, and it lays out what effective support might look like. These aren't hierarchical principles, they're labelled 1 to 7, but principle 1, it might be the starting point, but principle 7, well-informed staff, is obviously critical to achieving the other principles. They're all key pieces in the jigsaw of what effective schools do to support the educational welfare of their service children. And we're going to hear from a school later on with Steph, so that'll be very interesting. As we saw last week, the training suite has been put together by partners across the UK. As I said, I hope we can have some, oh, thanks Charlotte, there's the link again is in the chat. And again, do put in the chat the main messages, any actions you took from that. So I thought we'd start this week just by having a look at a different principle, principle 4, transition is effective, as that's something that came up so often in the chat and the questions last time. Many of you have faced challenges, some universal, supporting young people with adapting and managing friendships. Some are different with the different age groups and how it affects them. The different school starting ages, again, comes into it if children are moving between, particularly into Scotland, for example, that can cause difficulties for service children, particularly because they often move at non-standard times halfway through a school term. So this shows you how the toolkit presents the evidence in the research and some examples from schools, and then on the bottom right there it shows on the next page the user is going to be asked to rate themselves as emerging or developing or embedding their practice, and that just explains what that means. And then on the next page of the toolkit for each principle, you have these reflection questions, which you can use to review practice. You're prompted to consider what you do now, to read each question and think about what evidence do we have in our school, what might we start up, what else might we do? And then you've got those middle 3 columns to sort of think, where are you? And then you can reflect on the extent to which the school is emerging, developing, embedding, and there's somewhere to record the evidence for that judgment. For principle 4, transition is effective, the questions are prompting reflection around identifying service children, working through that long process around a move, providing a bridge with other schools, data, academic and pastoral support. And that bridge with other schools is both in terms of the data, knowing that the young person is coming and knowing what their attainment and this, that and the other is, but also I think a lot of schools do also make quite a lot of effort to help the child to connect with the school they're going to be going to. Yeah, I was in a meeting yesterday and they were talking about how a school had connected a family that had 2 children within the school, and they connected them with the school, I think it was out in Cyprus, or they were going abroad, and this school, they'd connected the 2 schools, they were sending videos backwards and forwards between the children and their future class teachers, and it was absolutely lovely, a really, really good idea to kind of help the family, help the young people to kind of get their head around that process of moving. So that's an example of a couple of pages in the toolkit and how they work. That's the same setup for each of those 7 principles. And you can do them in any order. It just allows you to go through and think about your practice and reflect on it. So the other thing I wanted to do this morning was just very quickly run through a few of the places you might go once you've done your reflection and you're thinking about actions and what you're going to do next. There are quite a lot of organisations that offer support, that produce resources. We're going to hear from a few of them today, but I also wanted to just run through. I won't spend long on this because we have the chair of SCIS, Steph, who's going to be talking later. She's also a head teacher here in Oxfordshire. But I also wanted to highlight, as an external person, that SCIS's website's well worth a look. They've got some good resources on there. But I'll let Steph say more about SCIS. And then there's a very good organisation up in Scotland, Scotland's Armed Forces Children's Charity, that again, their website has some fantastic resources. They've done some really good youth participation work. They've got a network of youth participation organisations and they've got a lead in that. So again, if you're wondering what to do about kind of hearing from your service children and things, their website and what they do is really worth a look, even though they only work in Scotland, but you can learn quite a lot, I think, from seeing their approach and seeing what they do. And they've got quite a few resources, I think, from that. And also in Wales, again, this website is absolutely fantastic. I would really recommend schools do go and have a look at it. A little bit of it is Welsh specific, but most of it is just fantastic resources. They're about how you can support service children in school. SSE Cymru has been around for, I think, since kind of about 2014-15, and they work really closely with schools, children and young people. They've got some fantastic resources. There's a resource on there all about applying for funding, how you can kind of make the most of applications, for example, to the Education Support Fund. But there are videos of young people talking about what it's like to move between different countries and all kinds of things like that. So again, I would recommend having a look at their website. I won't talk too much about CS either, because we're going to hear from Ed Harris later, specifically in relation to SEND. But again, I'd just like to highlight here really that this is the MOD's kind of Armed Forces Families Support Team, and they will provide really good support and advice. If you've got a family that you need to refer somewhere, this is where you'd go, or you can go directly to them and ask questions. They've got their qualified teachers, experienced case advisors who can answer queries about specific situations. And then there are a lot of fantastic charities working in this field. The relevant ones to education, probably, I've just picked some of them out. The Families Federations work really closely with families and with welfare units. They've also got sort of education experts. They collect information, they log what people have been asking on different themes, so they know what families are concerned about with education. So again, they're worth looking at. Their websites are worth a look. They do research and consultations and things. SAFA is the oldest and one of the biggest sort of tri-service charities. They mainly kind of helping with casework and things, but again, they'll support families, so they're a really good place to signpost to. Similarly, the Royal British Legion, they've also they've published a quite helpful guide on supporting service children that's on their website as well. And obviously there are hundreds and hundreds of service charities, quite a few of which do support families, so it is something to kind of think about if you need to signpost people to places. Armed Forces Education Trust is, they specifically give grants to support young people from armed forces families in education. So that could be for various reasons, but again, it's just something worth being aware of to signpost families to, if you think that would be relevant. And I should think a lot of schools probably have heard of Reading Force, because it's absolutely fantastic. They connect forces, children and the families when a parent is away from home. It's kind of guided shared reading, and they've got fantastic resources to kind of log what they're reading and share what they're doing, and improving communication and talking through books. So again, if you haven't heard of Reading Force, I would recommend going and having a look at their website. There are lots of others. If you've used other charities and things, I know there's Little Troopers and various other things. If you have and it's helped you, put that in the chat, because I'm sure other people on here today could probably benefit from that. I'd just like to give you a little bit of time to just look at the booklet, look at Principle 4 that I went through earlier, and I'm just going to give you 5 minutes to just look at that, read it. You can type your thoughts into the booklet is editable, and you can also download an editable version of the toolkit from our website. This is on page 21 to 22 of your delegate booklet. So have a look at those, and I would be really interested to see in the chat what you thought, which questions stood out to you. So I'm just going to be silent for just a couple of minutes and give everyone a chance to just look at the booklet and look at those questions. While you're in your booklet, there's also space in the booklet to kind of reflect on what you've learned and the actions that you're going to take as a result of today. So again, do fill that in. Do let us know in the chat there. Thanks, Amy. Yes, this was put together on the basis of research in schools, but actually early years and also further education is areas that we would love to be able to do a similar thing for. It's a very good point. Thank you, Tracy. That's fantastic. And one more Menti slide. So it's connecting well enough that Menti.com has now moved on. I know, yeah. So you can go onto that slide and tell us your thoughts on Mentimeter, but also I'm loving what everyone's putting in the chat. Yeah, thank you, Hazel. It's fantastic. So if you can let us know on Mentimeter, I'll share that. I might put that up in the break once everybody's put their ideas into that, because it doesn't seem to be working and updating on here. Okay, so we're going to have a little break for just 5 minutes. So it's 4:20. Go and get a quick cup of tea until for just a little bit longer, and then we'll go on to the next session, and we're going to hear from Jodie, who's a student at Oxford Brookes from an Armed Forces family. So thank you, Jodie, for joining us, and that's going to be brilliant. So we'll see you in just 5 minutes, okay?
Kath, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you, Andy.
Perfect, because I'm now tethering off my mobile, so hopefully it'll be better.
Yeah, it seems a lot clearer than before, so that seems
good.
Yeah, I think we'll get going with the second half.
Okay.
So I'm going to leave it with you, Andy, to
lovely.
Just introduce all of our next speakers. So
okay, hope you've all had a quick comfort break, everybody, and so far so good. Great, Kath, that you shared all those organisations' websites. I can only encourage all of you to find the time, if you have not checked out the contents of those websites, to take the time to do so. You will only benefit from doing that, and also take some quality time when you're able to really look in depth at the toolkit. I can only recommend it unreservedly. It is an excellent self-evaluative toolkit. It covers all aspects of the leadership, of the provision, of the outcomes for service pupils, and is something that I think any school should be using, but it needs a whole school approach to it. It needs senior leaders to be involved. With respect, I don't think it's good enough just for perhaps the service pupil champion within the school to do it alone. It's got to be a whole school approach: head teacher, senior leaders, middle leaders, and whoever's leading on the provision for service pupils, whether that's a family support worker, a special educational needs coordinator, a phase leader, or whatever, being involved as well. It does need a whole school approach so that there is collective understanding within the school about what is in good shape, what the strengths are, and where the areas for development are, and where attention needs to be focused. So please, if you do nothing else after this evening, please dedicate the time to be able to explore those websites that Kath has just showed you, and also delve into that toolkit and make good, effective use of it. All right, let's move into kind of the second session of the training this evening. I'm delighted to introduce Jodie. As I've already said, Jodie is the graduate ambassador at the Oxford Brookes University and is a service child herself. So Jodie, just give us an insight as to what it's been like for you, and support everybody with their understanding of the demands and challenges that you've faced over your time growing up.
Thank you, Andy, of course. So a little bit about me. I graduated 3 years ago today, actually. It came up on my Facebook timeline, with my degree from Oxford Brookes in early childhood studies. I now, and since then, have worked at the university in various roles in the UK recruitment and partnerships team, in the kind of outreach and recruitment aspect of university. And I'm super glad to be able to join you guys here to share my experiences, because it's really nice. Obviously, I'm now 24, so obviously it's really nice to see all these programs and the Thriving Lives Toolkit coming in, because particularly when I was growing up, a lot of these things didn't exist. So it's really nice to see them. So my dad has been in the military all my life. He still is currently serving at RAF Bryce Norton in Casterton. He has about 2 years left before he retires. So all of my life, I guess, has been spent as a kind of service child. Not that you really realise it. I think particularly at that time, I didn't really know that term really meant. It was just my dad had this job and there were things that went along with it. One thing to mention before I go too far is that these are my experiences, and actually I think one of the key things you guys have already seen is that every service child has a different experience. So in a way, you could say it was lucky that I only moved about 3 times in my educational career before I came to university. What for a lot of service children is very infrequent compared to certain places. So I was really lucky that when I was diagnosed with dyslexia in year 6, and my dad informed the military, they put on a condition where they would try not to move us, so I could have that continued education in one place, what I am really lucky of. So I didn't actually move around as much, but the one time I did, from where we lived with me growing up in Andover to now, there wasn't really such a thing as a transition really. It was, I was told I was moving, I kind of left the school and moved to the new one. Back then, social media wasn't really a thing, so I didn't really understand it, I guess, at that point. So looking back now, I have not had any contact with any of my friends. I haven't really been back since we moved, and this was when I was in year 6, so quite a good number of years back. So I kind of just lost contact. So for me, it wasn't really a transition. It was, this is your old school, this is your new school. And I think the biggest part of that transition for me was that actually when we lived in Andover, I lived on the military base. So I had as much freedom, it was quite a small one, to go wherever I wanted. It was very safe. And then moving to an area off the military base and having limitations was something I really struggled with. Like not being able to go wherever I want. And it's small things like that that I really remember now impacting me about that transition. So that's kind of the transition side. What I know is one of the kind of making sure that's really effective is one of the bits in this toolkit. And I think that is so important, not just from a paperwork side and from the like education transfer over, but actually kind of that understanding and well-being, the child understanding what's happening, and having that chance to keep contacts from their old environment whilst gaining them new kind of friendships, and having that support. It did feel quite like thrown in the deep end. I didn't really get to visit the school beforehand, things like that. So I think transition that you guys mentioned is a really big one. And I definitely, from things I've heard from you, that's come on a long way. I guess the other one is really during deployments. That was the other time I really struggled. Actually, probably more so than a lot of people realize, on the return or on the 2 weeks leave break that you get during some deployments. It's the transition periods I particularly found difficult, particularly the one on return, but also the one beforehand, knowing someone's going away. You're having, once they go away, to completely change your routine, going from a 2-parent household to a 1-parent household, and that meant more childminding services or staying at friends more, or being on my own, particularly when I grew up a bit, in the house instead of having people around. And then I'd get used to that for 6 months, 9 months, or in one case 10 months. And in between, it was difficult, but I had a new routine and I coped. It was actually the bit coming back that people, I think, don't always focus on. The fact that you spent 10 months with one parent having a routine, and then having your other parent come home, having seen things they probably don't always want to have, having been living in very different conditions, and actually needing time to sleep and get back into a new routine, a new clock system of being back home, whilst you're wanting them, whilst you're having to readapt to a completely new routine of having 2 parents back. And the fact that my mum was quite strict, my dad is very laid back, and particularly because he'd been away for 10 months, he wanted to gifts and do nice things with me, and gave in to me quite a lot, what caused a lot of tension between them. So I think that's a part of a routine that isn't always remembered. People remember the start and the planning, and like I remember getting a book about where he was going and getting a chance to do letters. And I think that has always been a focus. But something I would say is actually the transition at the end, or the transition over them visit weeks, is something I find that isn't always focused on, but actually can have a bigger impact on you as a service child. So that's something I kind of wanted to get across. I guess the last thing, obviously, as I did go to university, is a bit about my progression. So I didn't really think about progression a lot. I don't know if that's down to being a service child or not, but I kind of just thought about what I need to get through straight away. So when it was year 6, it was SATs and moving. When it was year 11, I didn't really plan what I was going to do after that until quite late, because all I was focusing on is getting my GCSEs and kind of getting to that point. I then just decided to go to the local college, crossed out the ones I didn't want to do, and was left with media and childcare, and kind of went with, well, I'll probably get a better job in childcare, but also I quite enjoy people and want to help people. And it wasn't until my tutor in college forced me to write a personal statement. Apparently it was part of the course, and was like, you might as well submit it. You can always do our postgrad foundation course we do here at the college. You don't have to go anywhere. The security of what I knew, I guess. And it wasn't until I visited a university and I was like, okay, I'll go to Oxford because it's close so I can commute. For me, staying near home, having regularity, and actually knowing what to expect. I didn't like change. I still don't. I like to know what to expect. Was really important. So I was going to live at home and commute, and it was only my dad pushing me a bit to be like, okay, move in for a few weeks. If you don't like it, it's not the end of the world. And that was kind of the best thing. I wish I'd got more support with understanding the journey of where I could go. I think being a service child and my mum also being in the civil service meant it was kind of, you finish school, college, you go and get a job. They'd never been to university. That wasn't even a thing for them. They didn't understand it. It was kind of just get a job in whatever you can or something you're interested in, whatever's available, and go from there. So I think careers advice is super important, because you don't always, particularly if you're in a school with a lot of military children, you don't always hear about other jobs that families do. What I think is sometimes kind of limits you, or as I used to say, you're kind of in a bit of a bubble world, particularly when you're living in military accommodation. So I didn't really know much about university, but actually as soon as I learned that there was a university close by, that was something really massive for me. You kind of, a lot of students I think have the conception that you can go miles away and that's what you have to do. So I really enjoyed that. And I've probably waffled on for way too long, but one last thing. I'm happy to answer more questions at the end. I'm pretty open book. I think the biggest thing that supported me whilst my dad was away and deployed wasn't always the fancy things. It wasn't always the things that cost a lot of money. The one I remember most was in secondary school. I went to a breakfast club. There was a few of us because dad was away and mum had to go to work early. And on the first day when they found out, I was a bit upset why my dad had gone away. They bought me a really nice teddy bear and I kept it at school, and if I needed a few minutes I was allowed to excuse myself, and normally I didn't, but knowing it was there, just knowing I had an item, I could just go, and I'm quite a huggy person, go and hug. And they knew if I picked it up, the person that kind of run that and did some other stuff would just ask if I was okay, and we would normally have a little chat about something completely different to distract me for a bit. And that simple thing was the biggest thing I remember. So it doesn't always have to be fancy. Sometimes just talking, and them knowing there's a place they can go to or someone they can talk to if they are struggling, or if they do need just 5 minutes. Sometimes lessons aren't always thinking about some things that might, particularly when you're in a school with 400, 500, 600 people, and topics might come up that set you off in a really random way that no one expects. Knowing I had that place and that person I could just go and talk to was probably the biggest thing for me. So I've probably way over talked, but I will leave it there and hand back to Andy. I hope that was helpful.
Jodie, thank you very much indeed. You haven't gone on too long at all, and thank you for that fascinating insight into how transition and deployment in particular, you know, put a strain on your own family life, and the impact of those different stages of the transition cycle and the deployment cycle. Thanks to Andrea on the chat as well, who has said, I couldn't agree more with you, Jodie. The adjustment when they come back is so hard. Everyone looks at it as though it's pure elation, but I just remember it being super stressful and a huge adjustment. So it's not to underestimate the impact that both the transition cycle and when, you know, a member of the family is deployed and returns can have on your family life. So Jodie, thank you very well. Thank you very much. Obviously, Jodie, the story you've told us is yours. The challenge I would lay down for all of you who have been listening to Jodie is how well do you know your service children? How well do you, as champions of the needs of service children in your settings, how do you get inside the minds of your service children? How well do you understand the emotional challenges that they face from time to time? And most service children will say they don't want to be treated any differently to anybody else, but they would like somebody who can listen in times of need. Would you agree with that, Jodie?
Oh, yeah, I would totally agree. You definitely, particularly if you're, I remember in my first school, one of a few, you definitely don't want to be picked out, but you definitely want people to be aware, the teachers, and just someone, like you said, that you can go to. I think that's probably a bit of a different environment when you know half the school is a military service children. There's probably less of that expectation. But particularly when you're one of a few, you really don't want to be highlighted, like most kids in schools. So just knowing there's someone you can go to who you don't have to tell everyone that you are going to talk to them about is really helpful. Yes.
Great. So thank you, Jodie, for that insight. Super. And thank you, Laura, for being so honest in terms of your role as a teaching assistant in supporting service children. Yeah, just listening to Jodie has made you think about how important it is to listen to your pupils and see things through their eyes. So that's great. And thank you to all the other delegates who have made comments there as well. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Steph Fordry, who, as you already know, is the head teacher at RAF Benson Primary School and chair of the SCIS National Executive Advisory Committee. So, Steph, lovely to have you with us. And I think you're going to share some good practice with us this evening.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andy, and good evening, everybody. Both Bev and myself have got about 6 hours worth of content, so I do apologise if we talk quite quickly. We want to kind of give you a flavour of our school, the sort of things that we do to support service children, and obviously we'll be available for questions at the end. Just to share with you, this is where we are. This is RAF Benson Community Primary School in the heart of RAF Benson. We are a local authority school. We are behind the wire, so we can be quite tricky to get into, particularly if anybody wants to make a spot visit. You know, the people trying to sell things, which it could be a good thing, but we are open to everybody who wishes to come to us. We Well, we have a staff team. Here's our World Book Day. I'm sure you have very similar things in school. Our World Book Day, we have around 30 staff in school, and very few of those members of staff are linked to the military. A lot of them are civilian, but what I have to say is all of our staff team get it. They get the service child. They get the fact that we have to treat service children differently to how we would normal children, because we have to think about how they are in terms of coming and going and have parents leaving. But my team are absolutely amazing, and that they are very finely tuned in to looking for things around issues around the service child. One of the things that we're commonly asked as a school is, how many children do you have in school? Well, my response is normally, well, today we have 195 children, because I'm sure many of you experience trickle postings. That's, we're RAF, we're part of Land Command, and we have predominantly RAF and some Army as well, but they trickle in and they trickle out rather than a full regimental move. So our numbers can have been as high as 200, 210, and when I first started at RF Benson, we were down to 149. So we're roughly around about 195, as it stands at the moment. So, but we do know there's a couple of children leaving, so that will change in the next couple of days. We work really hard to mitigate the effects of mobility and deployment, and one of our main strengths that we have identified ourselves and external eyes have identified also is our pastoral support. We have used education support money in the past to fund members of our pastoral support team, and it's an absolute key position in terms of supporting children so that any emotional needs aren't barriers to their learning. At this point, I'm going to pass across to Bev and her friends, and you will see, and she will talk about the essential role that she has in school and supporting our service children. So there we go, to move it around in a COVID-friendly way. There we go.
So, hi everyone. So deployment for us at the moment is being quite a big thing. In recent weeks, we have had up to 40 children, so nearly a quarter of our school population with deployed parents. So those are both mums and dads. And so I've been working really closely with the children, the families and the staff within the school to ensure that those children are supported during their parents' deployment. So when we get notification, when parents inform us that their children, that their partners are being deployed, I ask them to complete a notification of deployment form, which gives me the information that I need, such as the time that they're going to be away for, the dates, their destination, and a possible contact address. Now, I know that that's not always possible with all deployments, but for those parents who are contactable during that time, we ask them to provide us with an address. Which means that the children can continue to maintain contact during that time. Now, it could be anything from letters, blueies, pictures, crafts, Christmas, obviously those that deploy over the Christmas period, we will send out boxes containing Christmas presents. We've recently just had Father's Day, so we have sent out Father's Day cards to those children with deployed parents, but also for the children who have had mums deployed, we have made Father's Day cards at school for them to be able to take home to give to their dads, who are obviously the parent that has been remained at home to care for the children. I notify the staff that the children are going to be have a parent deployed, and I will give them a rough estimate of the times that the timescales that the parents are going to be away for. We've recently had a family whose parent has deployed, and as you probably all experience, he's going to be away for the best part of 10 months. So we're ensuring that that family is getting all the support that they need during their time. Social circle for my deployed children is a real joy every week for them to be able to come together, to know that they're not on their own, and for an opportunity for them to be able to make their crafts, make their cards, write their letters. Now, obviously, COVID at the moment has put a bit of has had a bit of an impact on what we're doing, but we are trying really hard to continue to make that run. We are doing it in bubbles, so we're having to do 7 social circles over a period of time, but to ensure that that support for those children is still there. I've been joined by a little variety. The Purlins are a line that when parents are clearing for deployment that they can apply for. They've got, I don't know whether you can see this, a little bag on the back which contains a talking tin, so the parents record a message which they leave for the children. We often see these in school, and the children, as Jodie referred to earlier, the teddy bear that she was given, we encourage the children to bring those into school, and if they need to take time out to spend time with their lions, then we allow them to do that. We've got Corporal Camo, who gets to go home with the children and write a diary when he spends time with the children. And we've also got George with his tags on there, I don't know whether you can see him, and his brother Scaredy. George often deploys with parents and they write back letters. The children write to George when he's away. He's been to lots of different countries, and the children write to him, and George then writes back to let them know that he's okay and enjoying his deployment. So that really is just a very, very rough snippet of what we do in Social Circle.
Okay, we'd just like to show you a short video, hopefully, if you can hear this. And can I just note that this was actually recorded pre-COVID times, because you'll see children from different bubbles kind of sat together. So hopefully you hear this.
Okay, what we're going to talk about is how we feel when our mummies and daddies go away.
I feel happy when my dad goes away, because I can come here at Social Circle and draw stuff for my daddy.
I like it when my dad goes away because I can come to Social Circle and send my dad lovely gifts.
What do we do when we find out our dad's coming away? What do we do in this room? The very first thing we do.
We draw a picture where our dad is, and we put it up on the wall.
Put it where? Do you want to point? Where we put it?
On the wall.
We put it up on the map, don't we? What other things do we do in Social Circle?
At the end of Social Circle, we get someone get Corporal Camo.
And who is Corporal Camo?
He's a teddy bear that goes to your house, and you write in a book that tells you what you need to, what you got to tell, and then when you go back to Social Circle, you've got to tell them what you did with Corporal Camo.
Okay, anybody else like to say something what we do?
The first time we come here, you take a picture of us on the bean bag.
Where does it go?
On the wall behind you.
It goes up onto the wall, doesn't it? Behind me, here. And then can we pull a funny face as well?
Yeah.
We can pull a funny face if we want to, can't we?
And well, I like it because we get to do lots of fun things. We do, and it's just really fun. Social Circle. I don't know why it's so fun.
You don't know why it's so fun. No, who is it you are holding? Who is that?
Scaredy.
That's Scaredy. And where does Scaredy live?
He lives in Social Circle.
He lives in the Social Circle room, doesn't he?
Yeah. Which is the Wessex room.
It is the Wessex room. Does he stay in here all the time?
Yes.
He does. Why does he stay in here all the time?
Because he's scared.
He likes quiet, doesn't he? He likes giving children cuddles. And who have you got?
I've got George, and he goes with parents to wherever they go, like Afghanistan and Spain and all that stuff.
And how do we contact George?
You send him letters and he sends them back.
Well, it helps me because for when I miss my daddy, at lunchtime, on a Friday, social circle just helps me not miss my daddy anymore, because we get to do fun things and it gets your bad members away. It does.
Social circle helps me forget about the sadness I feel when my parents are away, and it helps me concentrate on my work instead of thinking sad thoughts about them.
It helps me because when my dad goes away, it helps me be calm, because I'm usually upset because I miss my dad all the time.
Me and my sister pretended that our dad was away, so we came to social circle and we thought it was funny. It helps me concentrate because it gives me a boost, so it doesn't make me upset when I miss my dad.
So another issue that we have to deal with children in school is obviously children leaving and departing. When we are notified that children are coming into RAF's Benson Primary School, I ensure that I'm there to greet them on their first day. I think it's always nice for that one person to be there, to be consistent with these children. I show them to their classroom, show them around, make sure that they know where they're going, and I will liaise with the class staff to ensure that they are given a buddy. So somebody who, we try if we can, to somebody who lives very, very close to the children if possible. If not, somebody that we just know will make a good job of ensuring that these children are happy and settled in school. I make sure that they know where everything is within the school, so that they are able to find their way around during the school day. And I'll also ensure that I check in on them regular periods during the first couple of weeks, just to make sure that everything's okay, and just to try and allay any concerns that they may have. And I will try and feed that back to the parents whenever I can as well, that the children have settled and are feeling happy within their new school. I liaise with their old school to let them know that they have arrived, and also I will transfer any records that have arrived to the class teacher to ensure that they're aware of the children's academic levels. Unfortunately, it does mean we don't always get records from every school, and that sometimes makes our job quite difficult to assess the children. So we always make sure that any records that we have for our children are transferred across. When children are leaving, we ask the parents to complete a notification of leaving form. I will also start to work with the children to prepare them for their leaving. Now, obviously, because we're approaching the end of the year, we're getting quite a lot of notifications through for children who are leaving. So I'm beginning to start working with the children. I don't know whether you can see this, personal records, just to be able to send on to their new schools. So just a starting point for conversations. It's full of their personal information about their family, their likes, their dislikes, styles of learning, and the children are fully involved in completing that, and that goes with their books that we send on to their new schools. Now, I know at the moment, obviously, situations are quite difficult with COVID, so they're not always able to go and visit their new schools, but for those children, we are trying to arrange Zoom calls or Skype calls, something that we've been doing with schools overseas, because obviously they don't always get the opportunity to go and visit. And just to ensure that I can answer any questions I can in terms of, you know, what they might have, new teachers, new uniforms. And if we can't find that information out online and the children aren't able to visit and we can't arrange a Zoom call, I will make a telephone call to have a chat with them, the school, to see if we can get that information back to the children. When children go to new schools, I follow up, we complete our tracking. I will contact the schools to ensure that the children have arrived. We'll ensure that all their books are sent on along with their personal records. Any SEN records will be sent on. We'll ensure that the CTFs are transferred with all of their information on, and any safeguarding records that we may have as well, they are all sent through. So we ensure that everything follows these children to make sure that we don't miss anything. I will always also have a discussion with the Senko beforehand and she will contact new schools and will arrange transition books for children that need them, and have conversations with the SEN team at new school to liaise with any information that they may well need. Okay.
Thank you, Bev. Thanks back to me. As you can probably hear from Bev, we really feel that there needs to be a lot of communication around the service child so that they have the most successful transition, both coming into us and leaving us as well as possible. Now, I know that probably many of you have got a range of service children in your school. What I probably should have said earlier is that we've got about 98% service children where we are. We have some children who are not service. They don't look different from anybody else. They don't wear a different colour jumper. You know, I'm sure the complexities that we face in terms of children transferring from one school to another are the same if you have one or two children service children in your school as well. I'm going to move on very quickly. So I'm just going to talk from a leadership perspective, some of the challenges and opportunities that we have as a school. I'm not going to go through all of these in great detail, but some of the things that we find are a challenge. For example, admissions. I don't actually know how many children are going to be in our school in reception in September at the moment, because we have children who are moving over the summer holiday, and until they all rock up on the first day, we just kind of have to have a guess. If anybody has that crystal ball out there, please do let me know. That would be really useful. We also have children who obviously could miss a year as well because of how Scotland cut their date of birth. So we have to kind of take that into consideration when children are moving to us as well. Data is really an interesting thing. We obviously have to track the children really carefully, and it's really important to us here to have tight assessment on the children so that we know how much progress they've made whilst they've been with us, and that we can send meaningful information on to the new school. It does mean, however, that our data is slightly skewed, but particularly at the end of each key stage, and because we rarely have children travelling from reception to year 6. I think this year we've got about 2 children who've made that journey. They do get a long service award, I have to say, but it does mean that we don't own the data for those children, where schools who haven't got service children would own that data all the way through the key stage. Gaps in curriculum is another challenge for us, particularly in maths, because they may have just been going on to fractions at the school that they have left, and we may have just finished it. But again, that's why we feel assessment is really important, because we can pick up those gaps quite quickly. Something that Ed's going to touch on very shortly, SEND. We are finding that children coming to us with SEND is increasing, and we still need to look at tightening our procedures as well in terms of SEND and passing them on to other schools, and being the advocate for supporting how children with SEND are moving from one school to another. And obviously, with our fluctuating numbers, finance is a bit of an issue, if it isn't for many schools anyway. But with the challenges, we also have many opportunities. We have a diverse culture. I think actually within Oxfordshire, this is probably the only school I fit in with my Brummie accent, because there's many accents across the school. We have obviously a child-led curriculum, because we don't want the children to be repeating something, so they have a big say in what they're learning. And also the parental and station support is brilliant. I mean, we are not a military school, as I said before. We are a local authority school. You don't see children doing drill when you come, other than on Friday when it's Camo Day. We are a normal school, but because as every school would, you embrace the support that the local community provides, and that's obviously our unique situation with us here. I just wanted to flash up, there's a typo on the top one I noticed. I do apologise, that should say 2017-18. But just wanted to quickly show how mobility really affects us as a school. And for those of you who have got service children with quite high mobility, this might be a worthwhile activity for you to do, is to look at the cohort that you've got and look at the in-year mobility that you have, because actually it's really interesting when you're looking at data or trying to unpick a story as to why maybe a cohort may not have performed as well as another. But this for us, and certainly for when I've had Ofsted in the past, this has been a real key piece of work to kind of explain, you know, what that journey of that cohort has looked like. I mean, you can see, you know, that some of them are year 5 in the bottom table to the 2020 cohort had 91.6% mobility, which is obviously you know, quite a high number, and they all are quite high. And I just wanted to very briefly, I mean, this is where the Thriving Lives Toolkit has been absolutely invaluable, because, you know, it kind of allows you to really focus on your school, and, you know, and for us, and to look at where we need to make further enhancements and adjustments to make sure that we are really making a difference for the service children here. You know, and I think from a leadership perspective, you know, you need to be really confident and secure in the stories that, you know, in the success stories that you've got across the school and the areas of development, and also make sure to support those success stories. You've got some really key and strong evidence to support those. You know, and also the toolkit has also allowed us to kind of rethink about our systems and processes. I mean, personally, before COVID, we were 100% certain that they were robust, and you know, whilst they still are, you know, the toolkit has just enabled us again just to reevaluate those, and think actually we could, you know, really enhance that by adding, you know, some of the detail to things that we do in school. And then finally for us really, and we do this quite frequently, is to get pupil voice, you know, through social circle and other means, is to, you know, what is your school like for your service children through the eyes of a service child. And you know, and it's been brilliant, you know, when Jodie mentioned her experiences, and hopefully, you know, Jodie, you know, some of these things that we're saying now, you know, hopefully you'll be familiar with as well. So you know, for us as well, it's all about creating those memories for the children, so that, and you send them on to the next school fully equipped and resilient learners to be successful where they are going to go next, on the next exciting adventure, as we would say, when we present them with their leaving certificate before they move on. That's just a very quick picture about our partnerships, and then I think, Andy, I think I'll probably finish now, because I think we'll have questions at the end.
Yeah, lovely, thank you. Can you just go back to that last slide, please, Steph? The previous one. Yeah, that's lovely. Just keep that up for a minute. Steph and Bev, thank you very much for that insight into a school that has a high proportion of service pupils and high mobility as well. 50–60% in any one academic year is significant, isn't it? So, you know, that unique story you talk about there on that slide, in terms of, you know, demonstrating to whoever might need to know what the circumstances of your school is like, what you're doing to alleviate the challenges within those within that context. You know, please, if you don't feel well equipped to be able to articulate that story, then go to the toolkit, as Steph has said, and utilise that to help to identify the strengths in your provision and the impact they have on service pupils, and perhaps those areas for development, those relative weaknesses that you might be working on. The toolkit is there to support you with that process. And if you're an Oxford school, we have developed a service pupil premium review, which can sit alongside the toolkit. That's something that I've undertaken in a number of Oxfordshire schools, and we can carry out one of those reviews with you if you would find that useful, to have an external perspective in terms of pulling together that unique story that you want to be able to tell. And just one sort of question really from me for all of you. Steph used the term, her staff get it, her staff get service children. Do your staff get service children? If not, how are you going to make sure that they do? What can you do to work with senior leaders in order to strengthen that understanding of the needs of service children, and what you as a school can be doing to do things better for them, whatever that might look like? Just a query, Steph, from me. I could do it in the questions, but I'm going to do it now. Social circles. Is that loosely based on Jenny Mosley's circle time? Is that how it evolved, or is it a bit different?
It probably is, but it probably is different as well. It's certainly about 12 years ago it started off here, and I know it's been mentioned around the country via various publications and things like that. So it's very similar, but it's not directly linked.
No, okay, super. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on. Delighted that we, as you know, are joined by Ed Harris, Senior Education Officer at the MOD, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about supporting children with special educational needs and disabilities. Ed, great to have you with us this evening. Thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Andy. Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. I hope everyone can hear me okay. As Andy has said, my name's Ed Harris. I'm with the very grandly titled Global Education team, and that's part of the Armed Forces Families and Safeguarding Service within the MOD. Next slide, please, Ken. So there's a few aims really of the presentation. Obviously, I'd like to give you sort of an idea of the type of learning journey a service child goes on when they have additional needs, and also sort of a broader understanding about service children in education more generally. And also, we speak to an awful lot of service families, and it's useful, I think, sometimes to feedback a little about their experiences, their perceptions and their worries. And then just talk a little bit about some of the support mechanisms that the MOD has, and certainly in my department for armed forces families. Next slide, please. So in broad terms, the learning journey for a service child, and statistically, they tend to have far more educational transitions than their non-service peers. And as has been described by other contributors, they tend to have a lot more separation from their parents, and that can be at key stages and phases, and can be for a number of different reasons, whether that be a deployment, whether that be an exercise, or whether it's unaccompanied service. That also includes their movement between different education systems, and that can be within the UK, or equally they may accompany their parents on overseas assignments. Part of my job, which is the privilege and one of the most fascinating aspects, is that review of other education systems and understanding some of the transitional challenges that might be as a result of such a transition between our education systems in the UK and that of overseas. And obviously, as the subject of this particular presentation, there are particular challenges, unfortunately, for children from armed forces families who have special educational needs and disabilities. I think I'd be wrong, however, not to make the point, and I always want to try and get this balance correct, that actually service children bring an awful lot of experiences and personal strengths to schools. I'd be doing them a disservice if I didn't emphasise that. And I really do believe that our forces children are an incredible asset to schools and ultimately universities, and at the end their destinations in terms of workplace. Next slide, please. So what does the research say? On average, our students tend to do quite well. They're on a par in terms of DFE attainment data with their non-service peers. But as you would imagine, achievement tends to sort of be impacted the more schools that are attended. And certainly that's definitely the case when we're looking into secondary school. We know that from some research, initial research, that service children are underrepresented in higher education. That is even when they do have necessary point scores to achieve a university higher education place. And I think as well, I mean, what is clear as well through all research is that when schools, agencies, stakeholders do provide that support and have that understanding about the service child perspective, it's greatly appreciated and it's highly valued by service children themselves and also by their parents and families. Vast majority of our service children are happy. The word resilient, I'm always a little cautious about. I don't think our armed forces children are naturally resilient. They deal with it, I think is the key thing to say. but also they're incredibly proud to have a parent that is serving in the armed forces and does give a degree of identity. Sometimes that's not true at all. Sometimes it's just what their mum or dad do, and it has very little impact on them because they know nothing else. And there's always, with research, and it keeps people like Kath and other SCIP Alliance partners in the jobs, there's always more to be done. Next slide, please, Kath. So what service families say? As with all children and young people, they have very little control over what happens in their learning journey. This is particularly true for armed forces families. I think a lot of parents are very worried about what point they tell their children that they're going to be moving on, how they do that, whether they do it early, so they worry about it, or they do it late. There's a ton of research actually on when, for certain ages, that should happen. It can either be exciting or it can be particularly scary for them. Like all children, every armed forces child is different and reacts to these things in different ways. It's true also that a lot of parents are unaware about what the processes are involved in obtaining a school place, like a lot of parents are anyway, and how to make sure that they receive an effective provision for the children. I think one of the great challenges is within sort of each LA area and school and different countries even, there are different processes and different timescales that are put in place for all children, depending on where you are, and that can be quite challenging for parents to know. Parents feel they have a lack of control, and they also believe often that a lot of agencies simply don't understand what the implications can be of a service-related lifestyle. Mostly, families and parents, like all parents, often think the job of the parent is to genuinely feel guilty, but they want the children to feel included and to belong, and for that to happen as quickly as possible when they're moving around the country or countries. And the main thing to really emphasize here is that all of our families tell us that those first impressions really, really count. So that moment, I think it was sort of Steph was talking about, everyone really being involved in, in sort of welcoming a new family. But it makes a difference if, the first person they see is smiling and really giving that image that the family is welcome. Next slide, please. So in terms of children with SEND, a few different impacts that can be felt. Firstly, and most obviously, if you're moving around a lot, best will in the world, it can result in a delay in children's needs being formally identified. That graduated response may not fully sort of be completed, and that evidence that's being collected and observations can also be limited. So it can be incredibly challenging to actually understand the needs and the provision that's going to be effective in supporting those needs. Sometimes parents feel that agencies and schools, if they know that a child is going to be moving on soon, may feel that those needs aren't being acted upon, and that it's someone else's job in the next location to address those things. And children may find themselves repeatedly dropping to the bottom of waiting lists each time they move. I'm not into beating agencies over the head, but obviously, services such as CAMS are under enormous pressure, and it can be incredibly challenging if you are just getting to the point where you're going to be seen by a specialist agency, you move location, and you feel like you're starting the process again. As referred to earlier on in an earlier slide, sometimes that inconsistent type of revision to meet needs can be a real challenge, certainly for certain types of provision, certain types of needs. Obviously local offers between sort of local authority areas and schools, not always the exact type of provision is available, and that could be a real challenge. Steph also highlighted around sort of the universal challenge of shortage of resources, and this can be more keenly felt for those families who potentially arrive in a location midway through a financial year. Next slide, please, Kath. The other side of things as well is that movement between the nations of the UK and overseas can have, you know, particularly different offers and processes that are put in place to firstly assess needs and then put in place the provision that's required. Some people don't realise, talking from an England specific perspective, but that movement out of England does automatically mean that the legal status of the statute plan for SEND lapses, and so does the provision associated within that, which obviously means that it can be a bit of a challenge in terms of that process recommencing on return. There are many local authorities, however, who, depending on how long a child has been outside of that and they are returning to, that child has returned to their area, will sort of put in place a route whereby the family don't have to start the whole process again. But in theory, that can happen, which is obviously a huge concern, especially when you're talking about an education healthcare plan, which has such a substantial time frame associated with it. If we're talking about overseas scenarios as well, there are different cultural norms for supporting children with needs. I'm not really wishing to be disparaging about the US, but as you'll see from particular statistic there, for ADHD, the levels of diagnosis and treatment in terms of medication, it's 103 teenagers per 1,000, versus in the UK, it's 7.4 teenagers per 1,000. So there is a much greater instance of ADHD being treated in terms of with medication. So that transition back to the UK, where potentially the use of medication is less, has some physiological impacts as well as those cultural differences. And I think as well, there are some locations of the world where special educational needs are not treated in the way that the UK does, in the sense that it's something that can be believed that can be cured rather than necessarily something that is supported, which refers to that cultural social perceptions of SEND and our view of inclusion in education differing from other locations of the world. Next slide, please, Kath. So just a really sort of a brief overview of how it kind of works. MOD schools, our MOD schools across the world, they tend to mirror and follow as close as possible the SEND code of practice. But unfortunately, I've tried this on many occasions, we're not able to produce an education, health and care plan, nor maintain such a thing. So therefore we have our own equivalent, which is analogous to an EHCP, called a Service Children's Assessment Need, or a SCAN. And that sort of that document has very similar processes to that which is involved within an EHCP, and we hope therefore helps that transition for families back from MOD schools locations back into English areas and UK areas. In non-MOD schools, in English-speaking countries, the default setting is that service children attend the local state schools of that particular area, unless it can be proven that for whatever reason those state schools are not suitable for those children. And in non-English speaking localities, children attend international schools, obviously run by independent school groups. And all of that leads to vastly varying approaches to supporting special educational needs and disability. And that emphasis there that, you know, obviously we look specifically at children's supportability through an educational clearance process before allowing a child to travel overseas. Next slide, please, Kat. So in terms of the SEND Code of Practice and Service Children, you have to flick through quite a few pages to get to the section that references it. So those of you who are requiring potentially some help sleeping can flick through the Code of Practice and get to section 10.53 onwards. You'll see there the various sort of aspects that basically those with statutory responsibilities towards service children should ensure that they do. If you look at 10.57, there is actually a specific requirement that when an agency is carrying out an assessment of a service child's needs or making an EHC plan, those local authorities must seek advice from CAS, who are acting on behalf of the Secretary of State for Defence. So how can, next slide please, Ken. So how can schools help service children? As we described before, first impressions count. Everyone has to understand within the school the fears, the worries, the concerns, and that first impression can start sometime before a family arrives into an area. So it can start right from the point where a family is potentially considering schools in the local area before they've even moved. And I think it was Kathy was talking about some of the examples that are out there of schools supporting that transition, which is always appreciated, so that children can get an idea of where they're going, who their teacher is, and some of their classmates. And I think, you know, that's really important. I saw some really interesting stuff around virtual tours, which I thought looked really, really good for armed forces children. So if any schools out there fancy having a bash at that, please get in contact with me. We'll see what we can arrange. I think that'd be really interesting to do. The other side of it as well is service children aren't a homogenous group. They, like every other cohort of children, they're individuals. They will respond to things in different ways. They'll have very different needs, and therefore I've seen so many instances really where families end up sort of almost being cast into a light of, you know, they assume that there is a significant amount of challenge in life, when in reality they may not even move that often. The other thing that service children are supported by is opportunity to talk about their experiences, and more importantly, opportunities to be listened to. I think that's been referred to a number of times, and I think it's something that we don't want our armed forces children being forced into, but at the same time, that opportunity that they know there's someone that they can talk to and they know who that is really important. The Thriving Lives Toolkit, I've been promoting it to practically every local authority across the country. I've had nothing but rave reviews about it. Like all good bits of work, it's not rocket science, but it is just a brilliant point from taking everything from how you set up your governance all the way through to the practice in the classroom. So please make use of it. Don't let this opportunity of a fantastic resource slip through your fingers. Consider how you spend your service people premium. Even the smallest amounts of money can make an enormous amount of difference. I know that Oxfordshire, as an example, have done some brilliant work in terms of the service people premium and how that might be used. There are similar examples across local authorities to sort of consider as well. And I know at the moment the DfE are working on sort of a guide for the service people premium, which hopefully will be landing shortly, which we're helping out with through the Ministry of Defence Local Authority Partnership. Plan for transitions, those welcomes and goodbyes are very important, and if you can get those things right and start off on the right foot and end on the right foot, then it's incredibly helpful for our families. And please remember to signpost service families to the Children's Education Advisory Service, which are based in a little building in Uphaven on the Salisbury Plain. Next slide, please. So there's two key teams really within sort of our MOD support teams. There's my team, which is the Global Education team. We're SAP, the Armed Forces Family Service, and we work across a range of stakeholders in both UK and overseas, including government departments in the UK and overseas, local authorities, and again, across the UK and overseas. And we try and influence, you know, legislation, policy and practice of those organisations to make sure that it sets that environment and context to appropriately respond to the needs of armed forces children with SEND. So I'm always delighted that, you know, we're able to engage that side of things at that sort of level. If you ever have a cohort difficulty of families moving due to a whole regiment move, whether people to talk to in terms of opening sort of doors, we run Ministry of Defence Local Authority Partnership, which is one of the better things to come out of the MOD in a number of years. And also the Children's Education Advisory Service, which I talked about before and has been trailed by others on this presentation. They are a bunch of highly qualified and experienced teachers with that vast range of understanding, legal knowledge about sort of things like the admissions, school admissions process, in terms of sort of the statutory assessment across all areas of the UK. Plus also they can provide that advice to service parents directly in terms of how to manage those transitions. But they're always happy to talk to schools and local authorities if they need a bit of advice. And as we say, we talk at Huskers about ModLab. Next slide, please. So some contact information there. So those are multi-user address. I never mind getting emails, which is right at the start of this particular slide. I imagine the slides will be available at the end. So please get in touch. Follow us on Twitter. There's always some interesting things on Twitter. If you want to have a look for ModLab, we now have a ModLab website, which has some good practice on it, as well as details of a thing called the service principles for transition of armed forces children. You may want to badge your local authority to sign up about. If you do any sort of Google search or look on gov.uk, and I think there was something in the chat a moment ago about ModLab and its location, and please have a look at that. And that's me. So thank you so much for letting me talk to you, and I hope I've not got over time. But back to you, Andy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed, for that excellent input. No, you've not gone over at all. In fact, we are running just about as we wanted to. It's 25 to 6, so we've got about 10 minutes left. For those of you that have been following on the chat, you'll see that one of my colleagues, Oxfordshire County Council, Kim James, has posted a couple of little links there. Firstly to ModLab, and secondly to the Service Pupil Promise that Oxfordshire has developed in partnership with service pupils and schools. So please do check out those links if and when you get the opportunity. Okay, we've got a question and answer session now, and the panel quite clearly is made up of all our speakers today. So we've got Kath available there, along with Jodie, Steph, Bev and Ed. So do we have any questions that people have? Anything on the chat, Charlotte, that you picked up?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Yeah, I got a question through that was for Steph and Bev. You were referring to Camo Days. Could you just give us a bit more insight about what those are, just for people that don't know, please?
Yeah, I'm really sorry that we've probably kind of skirted over that in our enthusiasm to get through lots of things. So Camo Day is a day that's organised on an annual basis linked to Armed Forces Week, and is in support of SAFA, which is the Soldiers, Sailors, Airmen's Families Association. Yeah, that is it. And it happens differently in schools who are aware of it across the country, and for us it happens where, well, it runs in a fashion where we have various sections from the station come across and run bases for the children. If we're really lucky, we might have a helicopter land on the field that doesn't belong to us, but it's the RF Benson field, and other we have survival equipment, we have the fire engines coming across, and actually it's a lovely day. The children come and the staff come dressed in camo, and it's a really fantastic day to learn about actually our immediate community and the kind of jobs that their parents do, but also raise money as well, because the children come in and bring some money to raise money for the local SAFA, because obviously it's an absolutely essential service that they provide families, you know, in many circumstances. Hopefully that's answered the question.
Thank you, Steph. Charlotte, any other questions?
Thanks, Steph. That's cleared that up. I don't think we've got any more questions on the chat as of yet. Most of them have been answered through the chat. So we had a question about what is the Children's Educational Advisory Service, but Steph's very helpfully posted a link for that. So please do refer to the link from Steph. If anyone has any questions, do feel free to unmute yourself. You're very welcome just to...
We have just had one from Laura. A question regarding service pupil premium. Is this the same as the other pupil premium that school gets for certain children from a disadvantaged background? No, they are both separate grants. The grant that each eligible pupil receives if they are disadvantaged is sizably bigger. What is it at the moment, Steph? Is it 1,100?
For free first deprivation free pupil, that's it's about 1,300, I think it is.
Okay, so that's ring fenced to support children in achieving well in school, whereas the service pupil premium, currently £310, is meant to be ring fenced to support the pastoral and welfare needs of service pupils. So effectively they are not the same pupil premium. They are discrete and separate and should be used to support in different ways. Does that answer that? Would anybody else like to pick up on that and add to that? I'm particularly thinking of you, Steph, or Ed.
No, I'm just looking at the fact that someone's put in service pupil different. Service pupil premium different to pupil premium, but some children can get both, and that is right. On your MIS, you can indicate when it's census time that if a child has been flagged as being free school meals, that they can have that tag as well as a service pupil tag. They obviously have to meet the criteria for both. And from the autumn census, I believe that on SIMS or on your management system, it will flag up, rather than an error code, it will flag up as a query code. But children can be identified as both if you have them.
But again, the proportion of children with a service family background and a disadvantaged background is very, very low, for the obvious reason that one of the parents of the child in question is going to be a serving member of the armed forces. So we'll have an income, and unless it's a low income that falls below the threshold, they're unlikely to get the disadvantaged pupil premium as well. So is that from your perspective how you see it, Steph?
Yeah. There's about 4 scenarios where children can fit, and it could be where there's a separated family, or if there's been a bereavement of one of the parents and so on. So yeah, there are about 4 scenarios where it will actually fit. Okay. But it's only very small.
What's the best way of taking any further questions, Charlotte? Is it a case of people just speaking, just diving in now? Have we got any questions?
We've got a couple of minutes left, so now's your chance, everyone.
Okay, so we've got Tony. A stepchild a stepchild and falling into the L6 bracket. Yep, thank you, Tony. That's one of the scenarios that's possible for the double whammy. Have we got any other questions, please, folks, for any of our speakers this evening? Thank you, Laura. Goodbye.
Got a message that was directly to me, but just said very interesting. Thank you. So thanks for your feedback, everybody. I'm going to post the link to the evaluation survey, which will be included in the follow-up email anyway, but just so that you all have that. But please do feel free to post any last-minute questions.
Okay. Doesn't look like we're going to be having any more questions. We've just got some observations being made. Thank you for that, Charlotte. Should we just round up, Charlotte, now that it's coming up 1:45?
Yeah, I think so. So thank you ever so much, everybody that's spoken today. It's been absolutely brilliant to hear from you, from all of the external guests as well as Andy.
We've just had one question come in.
Yeah, just in that.
About care and service children being eligible.
Oh, so children who are cared for as well as service family, are they eligible for Pupil Premium Plus and Service Premium?
My understanding would be they are.
If they fit the criteria, then I would certainly, from a school perspective, put them down as that on the census.
Brilliant, thank you. Great. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. The recording will be shared with you, and please do take the time to fill out the evaluation survey. It's been absolutely wonderful to present to everybody and to see you all again. And thank you to all of our speakers. We've got a few thank yous coming in, so that's great.
Charlotte, just one question. Is the